Awesome. So thanks for joining. Great to see everybody. I'm looking out the window at the Pacific Ocean. It's another gorgeous day here. I hope it is on the East Coast as well. Tonight, you guys, we have two very special guests, one of whom actually is going to be doing the presenting. There we go. There we go, Michael. Okay, so we have two very special guests tonight, one of whom is going to be presenting. What is going on with this? Make sure everybody's muted. Looks like we're in good shape. Okay. Hi, Dorothy Sutton. Great to see you. So tonight we're going to hear from a relatively new teammate. These two, as husband and wife, Don and Wanda, have absolutely been going to town. I'm very excited. Don's going to be presenting, so it's really Don that I'm going to be introducing, but Wanda is inextricably woven all the way through, just so you know that, okay? Don is an engineer that worked 31 years in nuclear power facilities and working various jobs, moving up the corporate ladder, as many of us have done. The biggest highlight in his career was within the nuclear power plant. He was in charge of overall plant operations, which means, you guys, listen to this. When a nuclear plant is running, there is one person on shift, licensed by the federal government to the highest level, that is responsible to ensure the health and safety, that the health and safety of the public is protected. And not surprisingly, that was Don. So you can imagine the stress. Don's also an entrepreneur. He decided, because he had such an abundance of free time, to build a business in real estate, and bought his first rental house at 26, and shortly thereafter married his beautiful wife, Wanda. Wanda was a small business owner investing in commercial real estate as a side business, and now together, they both continue to invest in residential and commercial real estate. They were introduced to this by none other than Robert Kiyosaki's books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the Cash Flow book, both of which really spoke to them, and they decided to go all in. They plugged into Robert's organization, heard he was giving seminars that were at the time being taught, amazing, I'm so jealous, personally by him and his team of advisors. The seminars, one per year, were super expensive, but as Don and Wanda have said repeatedly, worth every penny. They learned directly from Robert how to move from the left side of the cash flow quadrant to the right side using their real estate investments. Don himself moved from the E quadrant to the I quadrant 11 years ago. And Wanda has been actively transitioning her business from an S to an I. Then she heard about Isagenix. Now, so excitingly, they're both working toward building a B business with Isagenix. So we're going to hear about the cash flow quadrant, you guys. And why I'm so excited about this, as I said, Don and Wanda they heard this directly from Robert, not a cutout cardboard version of Robert placed at the front of the room, directly from him. And as I understood from Don earlier on a call today, Robert, as a former Marine, doesn't mince words. So I think you're going to hear some language tonight that perhaps you're not hearing in Rich Dad, Poor Dad or Cash Flow. So Don, I'm delighted to introduce you. Let's go, big guy.
All right.
Okay, you are now co-host, so you can share your screen.
Are we there?
We are there, perfect.
Okay. So, like Mark had mentioned, I'm going to be doing the talking, but as this thing says, our journey. So anything where I happen to say me or I, we're really talking about both of us. So Who is Robert Kiyosaki? From Isagenix, you probably know him from the 3 books, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, and the more recent book, The Business of the 21st Century. But actually, Robert has written many, many, many books, and he was on a New York bestsellers list for like 6 years straight. Super successful. He's had incredible business successes. He's had incredible business failures. He travels around the world lecturing, and his focus has always been to provide the financial education that is not taught in schools. He was frustrated from that when he was a young boy, that he wasn't learning about money like he thought he should. And he's built this incredible business to spread that information really around the world. And his goal, of course, is that we would get to financial independence, what he calls exiting the rat race, where passive income exceeds your expenses. A couple of weeks ago, we had an Isagenix party at the house, and Julie asked me to talk a little bit about the books. And I tried to think, what can I say about these books just overall in summary? And this is what I came up with, is that these books teach you how to think and to act like a rich person. He's teaching you, most of us were probably programmed to think a certain way. And he's saying, no, you need to think, you need to change your thinking. And that's what he does in a very strict and formal way. Most people think the first product that he came out with was the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, but actually it was this, the Cash Flow board game, How to Get Out of the Rat Race. And here's just a look at the board game, and you're in the rat race to begin with. You're going round and round the circle, getting paychecks, and the only way to get out of the rat race is to get your passive income greater than your expenses. And this is not just a board game where you turn your brain off and play. I mean, you start off, here's an example, and you're given a certain salary and mortgages and different expenses, your assets and liabilities. And then as you go around the rat race, you evaluate small and big deals. And when you first start playing this, if you're not familiar with evaluating a business or evaluating investment, you'll say, I'm not really sure how to do this. And that was some of the feedback from this first product is, hey, we really need an instruction manual on how to do this. And as a result of that, that's what he created the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book to help to give that kind of information out there on how to understand being a B and an I. This is a fantastic learning tool. It's still available for sale, both as an adult version, and they have a child's version also. So the cash flow quadrant that certainly Isagenix has incorporated, and I'll just go about this a little bit different probably than you've heard before. So as the E is an employee, and I was an employee, I got up each morning, I drove to work, I did what somebody else wanted me to do all day long, then I got in the car and drove home. And so most of that day was gone. That valuable, valuable time was gone. I get my paycheck every 2 weeks. I look at it, and both the state and federal government had taken their part out before I got mine. And as far as taxes, I found that the tax laws, there was not much I could do as an employee. Most people probably just use TurboTax because there's really not much you can do as far as tax breaks in the tax law. S, and Wanda's an S. S can stand for self-employed. It can be small business. It could be stand for specialist, like a doctor or lawyer that's got an office. And an S has some advantages that the E doesn't, because you're the boss. You have more control of your time. And certainly there's some perks from being the boss and some tax write-offs and different things like that. But the bottom line, you are still a key part of that business. The business might run a little while without you, but you're not going to be gone for very long until the business starts to suffer. So E and the S on the left side of the quadrant, you're both of those cases, you're trading money, your time for money. And before I go to the other side of the quadrant, I just want to really emphasize something, because if you go through this fast, you might miss it. So there's something here when I made that transition from one side to the other that changed my life radically, just a huge change. And it's one word, and here it is: time. When I made that change over, suddenly that time that I was giving to other people and that time that I was driving on the road was mine to manage as I saw fit. And so first, I wasn't getting enough sleep when I was working, so I was able to take the time that I had used to drive and get more sleep, which helped obviously with my health. And it's time to build the business, especially in the real estate. There's a lot of face time that you need, and also just all the quality of life things that get so much better when you've got that time to deal with family and the other little bumps in the road, things that come up. You're right there. You've got the time. You can take care of it. So I don't want you to miss that important part of this as we go through this. That, you know, what's the thing that so excites me about when I made that transition is the change in the time that I had. So we'll talk about B, big business. Robert Kiyosaki calls that 500 employees or more, but there's really nothing magical about that number. It really means that that business is big enough, that it's got the systems in place and the people in place, that it can run on its own, and not whether you get out of bed or not, and not just run, but it continue to grow and prosper. I have a perfect example of that. I've got a really good friend, and his dad built a successful family business. Dad gets cancer. So the son says, Dad, you and my sister, you know, we're all going to get an RV. We're going to get in that RV and we're going to take you around the country. You spent your life sacrificing building this business. You didn't have time to go out and see all this. So we're going to take you out and see that while you still have your health. So they had to make sure the systems were in place, and they had to hire a few people to cover the work that they were doing. And off they went, and they were gone for 1 year. And he said that they got a few calls to begin with, but after that, it was all quiet. They came back a year later, and the business was better than when he left. Now, and they had 200, 250 people. So again, it's not the 500. They'll be tied to that number. It's just you got the systems, you got the people in place. So if you're building an Isagenix business right now, then you're working toward building a B business. And Robert would call that you're building an asset, something that's putting money into your pocket. In this case, Isagenix, they already have the systems in place. They're just, here they are. If you were building a business from scratch, you'd have to do that all from scratch. Or if you bought a franchise, for example, you got to pay a bunch of money up front to get those systems that they provide to you. But in this case, it's already provided. So just in your spare time or in the pockets of your time, you're moving from the left side of this quadrant to the right side of the quadrant with no risk in Isagenix. And I can tell you, when Wanda and I made that jump from E to I, what did it take in real estate? Was there any risks involved and money involved? It's unbelievable. I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears, baby. I mean, it was the whole thing. So just so much better that you're doing this without the risk. You know, the compensation plan for Isagenix, and I won't talk to people on this call and qualified about it, but certainly opportunities to make both the immediate, what I guess what they call linear funds from meeting certain criteria, and then also the more important in my mind, that you're building that residual passive income with leverage from this team that can pay you the rest of the time. And just a reminder again, you're doing this without risk. So what a huge deal that is on the B side for Isagenix. I, investor, whether you're an E or an S or a B, wherever you're at, your goal should be that your excess funds, your free cash flow, whatever you want to call that, some of your funds should be investing to grow. And here's what Robert Kiyosaki says. He says, and again, you'll get an idea of how he speaks with what I'm about to say, which is poor and middle class people work hard for money. Rich people have their money work hard for them. So your goal as an I is to get your money and get it invested and get it working and get it growing, versus on the other side of the quadrant where you're working so hard for the money. On this side, what? The money's working for me? Yes, that's the whole idea. And so a good question to ask yourself on how you're doing on this, just ask yourself, how hard is my money working for me right now? Everybody just think about that. How hard is that money working? You got inflation right now. Is that money growing and beating or keeping up with inflation? You know, that'd be on the happy side. On the sad side, maybe it's laying on the couch, eating bonbons, waiting for you to get home from work, right? There's somewhere in between. So that's the, you know, Robert talks about when he sells a property or he gets a block of cash somehow and he puts it in the bank, that drives him crazy. He says, the last thing I want to do is have this money sitting in the bank. I want to get that money back out working, get it out there investing, get it growing, getting it working for me. So that's the idea and the mentality of the B and the I side, is that rich thinking that he always talks about. Now, Mark pretty much told our story, so I won't spend too much time with that. You know, I was an E, built the real estate on the side. I met Wanda. She's a landscape architect, and her uncle had a landscape contracting business. And after we got married, shortly afterwards, she bought him out. And they were also doing commercial real estate on the side. So we did that together. But we really didn't have a plan, a goal. You know, where's this going? We knew it was doing good stuff, but we really didn't have a good plan. And then Wanda's uncle introduced us to Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2005. And we read that, really opened our eyes about business and what we should be doing. And we read the Cash Flow Quadrant and just sucking in anything we could from Robert Kiyosaki. And then we heard that he was giving these personal seminars. We missed the first one. I think the first one we went to was 2006. And we signed up for that. And whoo, it was expensive. And well, we talked about that. Oh, we're going to spend that money, but we did. And looking back, it was one of the best things that we ever did, was go to that. So, and I was telling Mark earlier, the first one we went to, we're sitting outside and the door was locked and a lady standing there. She said, have you ever been to one of these before? No, we haven't. She says, well, let me tell you, he runs the show. So when you get in there, you have your seat, and if you got a drink, you finish it up and you put it away. And if you got your phone or anything else distracting, you put that away. And whatever you do, he starts talking. You don't talk, you don't whisper, you're listening to what he's saying. And sure enough, he came in, he started laying down the law. Here's the rules and here's how it's going to be. And like I say, he's an ex-Marine, he's a tough guy, he's a serious guy. And so some of the stuff that you read and the words that he says, that comes through. He talks about people, if you do this, you're a loser, or that type of thing. So it's some tough words. In my understanding of what he's doing, his teaching style, he can't come out and personally shake you, but he's mentally shaking you to say, look, you've been programmed wrong. You're headed the wrong way. Turn and go this way. And he's doing it with some strong words, which is similar, I think, to like boot camp, or for those of you that like Seinfeld, like the soup Nazi, right? He's totally in control. So there's a picture with Robert and me. That's, of course, before the collagen and the hair revival. Things are a little better now. And there's Wanda with the person on the left is Mike Maloney, who's the gold and silver, his advisor. So he was up there teaching. His advisors, the close personal advisors were teaching. And during the breaks, you could go up and talk to the advisors. And even better, during the lunch, they had a long lunch. They had each advisor at one table, and then you could pick where you wanted to sit. If you wanted to ask the real estate guy, you go sit at that table. You got your questions answered. You go to the tax strategist person or the attorney or the gold and silver guy. So just an incredible opportunity. There's no way we would have been able to have that personal contact, any other way than that. It's just fantastic.
Don, maybe you could just really briefly share the story of what happened outside the doors before you went into your very first seminar. Remember that the gal told you, she asked you, had you ever been to one before? And you said no. And she kind of prepped you for what was to come. Right.
Yeah. She prepped us fairly well, but still he was more intense even than what we had anticipated. And I think he has mellowed over the years. That, it's been many years ago. So I think on the stuff I see him on videos, and I think he's mellowed a little bit with age, but he's still a tough guy. The second seminar we went to early on, he said, has anybody got any questions? And the guy stood up and questioned whether his business was really a B or not. And everybody that knew Robert was just gasping for like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? So Robert very quickly and briefly explained to him why for sure his business was a B. And then he pointed to the lady in the back. He said, you see that lady in the back? You get with her. She's going to give you your money back. You're out of here.
Wow.
And that's the
He's
way.
tough. I can tell you his language was strong language. And we just finished a Tony Robbins weekend, 5 days, just finished today. And Tony was really very encouraging, and he's loud and he's big, especially with I'm 5 foot and you can see he towers. But he was encouraging. He was tenderhearted. But I tell you what, I would not give a minute when he puts that loser up. You know what I mean? He does that loser, and you just don't want him to be looking at you when he throws that L up there. And yeah, he was worth every penny.
Hey Don, what about the $100 he charged somebody?
All right, so. Normally for these classes, you had to read some books, as your homework, before you got there. 1 or 2 books you had to read, and that was your prep for it. So as he went through the beginning, he'd say, oh, by the way, did anybody not read the books that you were supposed to? And of course, a couple of foolish people raised their hands. And he said, you people get right up to the front and you put $100 right up here on the table. And then he just tongue lashed them. He says, I'm not here, I'm here to try to help you. And, on and on and on. I won't tell you all the things that he said, but anyway, we all got the idea that when he says to do something, you do it. Again, it's like, we see it like.
But Don, wasn't that point that if you're not prepared, then it's costing you your time, it's costing his time, and
right.
It's costing money. Like getting the point that if somebody's asking you to do something, it's for your good. And if not, you lose the money.
You say, you're crazy. When are you going to get this kind of help? And you won't even do this little thing I've asked you to do. So anyway, yeah, it was an education just in his education methods. So we went through all that. Well, did we get anything out of it? Yes. We created a plan to exit the rat race, his term for getting our passive income greater than our expenses. And this is basically the plan. We said, we're going to build our real estate. And again, at that point, we didn't know anything about network marketing. We didn't know anybody that did anything about it. So real estate was the way for us to move from the left to the right. And so that's what we did. So we wanted to build this large enough that we could both exit the rat race. And of course, yeah, there's a number of ands here, which makes it that much harder. And we could live very comfortably. So not just enough to exit the rat race and have our income a little bit more than expenses. We wanted to live very comfortably, and we wanted to not have a lot of debt, and we wanted to have sufficient cash flow so that our real estate investments would continue to grow, because we've seen people make that error before where they retire and just the funds and what they'd planned just wasn't big enough. And before it's over with, they've run out of money. So we didn't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. We wanted to have this thing continue to grow while we enjoyed it. So how is this plan going? So I moved, like Mark had mentioned, from an E to an I. I made that transition about 11 years ago. And so I was able to focus on building this real estate investments to reach that height, the goal that we just mentioned. Wanda's got she's third generation business, had been in business for 60 years, got employees. So a lot more thought and determination on how to deal with that. And so we've been working on that. And so, but by no later than sometime next year, she's going to be either shut down or downsized from that, and she'll be moving from the S to the I. Our cash flow that's needed to make that work is ahead of schedule, so we're in good shape on that. The one thing was that Wanda, when she moved out of the S, she had always wanted to have some kind of health and wellness business. We couldn't really figure out what to do with that. It was always just like an open-ended thing we're trying to figure out. And then, what do you know, Isagenix comes along and voila, there it is. It's like the perfect thing. And so now we're working towards, moving her from an S into a B. I think Mark and Lynn, you might remember one of the early talks we had, we asked you, hey, this Isagenix, is it a B or not? And we were so excited to hear it was, because we knew, of course, the cash flow quadrant, we knew the E and the S and the I, but we really had no thought on even how to get to the B. So it's very exciting that we have that plan and opportunity now. So what else did we learn from Robert? Obviously, a lot of things. I picked out some things that I thought were kind of aha moments for me that I thought might be helpful. So here is his 4-step plan. How does Robert do it? He builds a business, then he reinvests in his business. What is exactly what you all are doing right now. You don't just build a business and then suck it dry. He's putting funds back into it and helping it growing, getting stronger, staying up with changes. And then he takes the excess cash flow from that and he invests it in real estate. So he's taking the cash flow from a B and investing it in an I. And in some of the books, they talk about how can you afford this property, this piece of land, or this business that you've bought. And he said, I can't afford it. It's the business that bought it for me. It's this cash flow that he's created is buying these things that he's investing in now. And this last thing I highlighted, let your assets buy your doodads. He calls luxury items doodads. And in that board game, they're called doodads. And what he's saying is, it's the opposite of someone that wins the lottery, for example, and they get $1 million or $2 million, and they'll run out and buy a house, but they don't pay cash for it. They'll just put some money down, and they'll buy a fancy car, put some money down, and they'll buy this and they'll buy that. Everybody's got their own kind of doodads they're interested in. And somewhere down the line, the cash runs out, and you've got all these expenses. And then just like a snap of a finger, these folks are bankrupt. It's like, how can you be bankrupt? It's because you're building up all these expenses. There's no asset for what he build your business, build your assets, and let these assets cash flow and buy the doodads. He says, I love doodads. I love Italian fancy sports cars. He says, if I want a fancy doodad, I will create an asset to make the payment on it. It's as simple as that. So it's the other way around. It was very eye-opening for me. More lessons learned. He says business is a team sport, and certainly Isagenix is all about working in teams. You know, the network marketing by itself, just the nature of it drives teams. And here we're on a team tonight. He says, you know, in school, you know, if you try to work with your neighbor, that's called cheating. But in the business world, you work as a team. He said, imagine any kind of team sport like football or softball or basketball, whatever it is. Imagine you're going out by yourself against the other team. You're going to get slaughtered. He says, you want team members? And he says, when I'm sitting around the table with my team, I want to be the dumbest guy at the table. Which when I first heard that, it's like, I'm not sure what he's saying there. But the bottom line is he's bringing experts in that have expertise in their area, much more so than what he knows. And he's able to learn from these people. He doesn't want to be the one that's the smartest in the room trying to tell them something. So super focus on building a strong team. From the Bible, Proverbs 11:14, where there is no guidance, the people fall, but an abundance of counselors, there is victory. He says, making mistakes is good. Don, are you sure you got that right? Yes, that's what he said. Making mistakes is good, because he says that's how you learn, right? In school, you learn making mistakes is bad. And obviously, a lot of times we can read books, we can learn from others, so we don't have to make, you know, we can learn from them and not make all the mistakes. But the bottom line now, when you go out and you build a business and you do something, you're going to make some mistakes. You plan on it. You already know you're going to make some mistakes. You learn from them. If you get knocked down, you get back up and you keep on going. He's a tough guy. He's been knocked down many times. He learns from mistakes and he moves on. Mistakes are good. Obviously, we learned a lot about real estate investing. That's not our discussion tonight, so I won't mention that. I learned this from his tax strategist, which was eye-opening to me. He said the tax code is written to incentivize us to get done what the government wants to get done. And I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but he said the government has certain things they want to do, and they know they're not good at it, so they incentivize people to do that. And here's some examples that I came up with. Businesses, obviously there's lots of tax incentives for businesses. And why is that? Businesses hire employees. We'd like to have full employment, and we like employees because employees pay taxes, which the government likes. So businesses, they like business to create lots of employees. Real estate, they need housing. You know, right now in this country, there's like a shortage of 5 million housing units. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Probably wherever you're at, there's an issue going on with rents are going up and houses for sale go really quick. And so has always been some really good tax breaks for people that are building houses or taking an old house and renovating it. And probably you're going to see more of those changes to try to incentivize people to get rid of and clear up this shortage that we've got. And the last one I came up with is oil and gas. You know, I spent a good part of my career in the utility business. And so I can tell you, wind and solar is a wonderful thing, but lots of days the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. But even if it did, that's only a small amount of electricity needed to run this country. This country runs on oil and gas, and it will for the foreseeable future. And even if everybody instantaneously today could go and trade their cars in for electric cars, that wouldn't work because the utilities couldn't make the electricity to support all that. So the country and the world is working towards that, but it's going to take some time. In the meantime, we need oil and gas. And so has been some really good tax breaks for people interested in investing in that. And that's what the government wants you to do. So this is not just secret things that only rich people know about. I met a guy 2 weeks ago that's more active in real estate than I am. He says, I'm not going to pay, looks like I'm not going to pay any tax this year or next year. and he's just using the tax code. And so what this guy said, he said, don't complain about it. As you become an investor, start to learn what does the tax code want you to do, and see if you can't do what they're asking you to do and take advantage of it. It was very eye-opening to me. Just a different way of thinking about what's out there. Why does Robert invest in real estate as an I? Just quickly, obviously cash flow, like any business. Real estate is a business. Cash flow, real estate, he's hoping, it's nice if you have appreciation. It's really not necessary, because the cash flow is the main focus of what he talks about and what he preaches, because he doesn't buy and sell flip houses or properties or apartments. He buys them and he holds them for the cash flow. Loan amortization, you don't have to put 100% down. You can just put a down payment just like any real estate, and you can use other people's money as part of the investment, as opposed to if I want to buy Apple stock or something like that, and I go to the bank and say, I'd like to buy some Apple stock. How much money, Mr. Banker or Mrs. Banker, are you going to give to me for that Apple stock? And the answer is they're not going to give you money for Apple stock, because 5 minutes after you buy it, you could sell it. But anyway, it's unique to the real estate that you can actually loan money against it. And as I mentioned before, tax shelters, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but that little list right there, if you hear this person or that person, oh, they're not paying any tax. If they're doing real estate, I guarantee that's what they're doing right there. They're using the tax code that's available to anybody. Here's one. A 401k plan makes you think like a poor person. Again, this is a case where Robert is shaking up, he's grabbing you and shaking up the way you think. 401k, the idea, as I'm working as an employee, I'm putting the money into this plan and it's growing tax-free, which is a wonderful thing. And then later on, I'm older and I retire and I take the money out and I pay tax at that time. And then the rest of that is you pay tax at that time when you're making less money. And Robert says, so that's your plan, to make less money? He says, why are you doing that? Why don't you want to make more money? And again, why that is because that's the way we've been programmed, right? It was the same, it just woke me up the same way. It's like, oh boy, I've been thinking wrong about that. So see, what he's trying to do is change your thinking. Think like a rich person. Have multiple diverse sources of income. Lynn and Mark talked about that last week, so I won't spend a lot of time on that, but just think, if a couple months ago you'd invested in some businesses in real estate or Ukraine, for example. You just never know what's going to go on. If you got all your eggs in one basket, suddenly you can be in trouble. And from Ecclesiastics, divide your portion to 7 or 8. You do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. As I invest in something that interests you. When I'm talking to people, I like real estate, so I talk to them about that. And if somebody says, yeah, I think I'd like to invest in real estate, what I'll ask them is, are you interested in real estate? Because whatever you invest in, I guarantee you, somewhere along the line, things aren't going to go like you wanted, and you're going to get knocked down. And if you aren't really interested in it, if your heart's not in it, then you're more likely to just walk away from it. Failed to mention early on, I bought my first rent house at 26. Well, 6 months later, the house flooded. So you just never know. And so it's best, and it doesn't have to be something big. Like I said, it could be horses. There's so many things you can invest in. Invest in something, if you can, that interests in you, that you're interested in. More education you have, the less risky an investment is. Robert talks about going around doing seminars around the world. And invariably, at the end, somebody will stand up and say, Robert, well, I know you can do it where you're at, but here you can't do that. And his answer is always the same. He says, I believe that you can't do it, but I can. And he's not saying that because he's an arrogant, son of a gun. He's saying it because he has the education and experience to do that. And the more education that you get, the less risky an investment is. And today, with the internet and all these videos, the opportunities for education are just so much better than they have been in the past. So just incredible opportunities to get educated on something as you move forward. If you want to be more successful, help more people. Certainly that's what Isagenix is all about. And really any business, if you're growing the business, it's reaching out to more people, it's helping more people. And by definition, it becomes more successful. Some final thoughts. Mentors, mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. I'd hate to think what our life would have been like if we hadn't been through that, and so incredibly helpful. Certainly we've got some new mentors now in Isagenix with Lynn and Mark and Jimmy and Julie and some other folks that, you know, we're just getting started. So these people are way ahead of us, and that's a wonderful thing. There's Robert. This is a Peter Grandich, which has been very helpful to us for financial issues in the stock market and what's going on in the world and in the country. So we reach out to mentors we know we need. It's just so good to reach out and get these people that are farther down the road than you, reach out to them. And they're most of the time wanting to help you. Now, this is Wanda's Uncle Walt, which is incredibly helpful to us early on in both the business and the real estate. For those of you interested in knowing more about Robert Kiyosaki, besides his books, he's on YouTube. He's probably, I don't know about every day, but there's lots of YouTube videos out there that you can watch or listen to while you're driving down the road. He talks about all kinds of subjects. Learn to think like a rich person, right? In its simplest term, what did we do out of all this? We changed our thinking. Learn to think like a rich person. Create a plan and exit the rat race. Whew, what a nice thing that is. What a wonderful change. If it had not been for all this I've talked about, I have no doubt I'd still be running the rat race. I'd still be working at the plant, and life would have been not near as nice as it is now. And the last thing I'll leave you with is this little saying, which I like a lot: be happy wherever you're at, but not content to stay there. Practice being happy now. Don't wait until sometime in the future to be happy. Be happy where you're at. And here's a couple of happy pictures of this in Rio. Yeah, and this last picture, if this doesn't make you smile, doesn't make you happy, then I don't know what does. Because there's Wanda at
The Great Wall
of China.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark and Lynn, that was my presentation.
Don, that was awesome, dude. That was really, really fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Within the context of the cash flow quadrant, and Julie, I'll get to you. I see your raised hand. What about Isagenix and network marketing excites you? What attracted you? What kind of got your motor running?
I guess just the infinite opportunity of growth was certainly appealing. I mean, the first thing that appealed to me was obviously the products, and so I became sold on the company. A product of the product, as Jimmy has taught me to say. But then just seeing how well this could work, and just to me, like I said, it's just so much opportunity out there. It's just, who is not going to want some of these products? It's like, we need to be part of this. This thing is going, and we want to get on this train before it leaves the station.
That's awesome. Maybe what you could do is stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody for a second. There we go. Beautiful. Julie, did you have a question? Did you have a comment?
Questions. I wanted to ask Don, when you were that engineer in St. Francis at the nuclear plant, wasn't there a gentleman there that was in real estate and kind of got you started, and that really prompted that? And then I have a second question.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to have a business on the side, but I didn't really know what it was. And my family was all E's and S's, so I didn't really have a mentor. And so when I started working at the plant, there was a guy I was working with, and he was investing in real estate. He was buying houses. It's like, hey, I think I can do that. And I learned from him. And so he became, I guess, one of the first mentors in the real estate. And that's what got me started.
And the second question I have is, I think, and I don't know the story, Wanda, so maybe I'm exposing you, but I think Don coaches you on often saying, Wanda, you got to think more like a business, a big business. Just recently, you were sharing. I mean, Don's like a beautiful support for all of our team. To be honest, like, we're so grateful to have both of you and to have you on our team. But wasn't there a time when you were like, Wanda, you got to think more like a business person?
Well, I mean,
maybe talk about Wanda. Y'all plan. You have a 40-year plan.
Right.
And
Yeah,
Wanda's into the story of how Isagenix came into your life at a deeper level, maybe.
So I'll start this, and I'll let her say her part on it. So, I mean, she's an S, right? She's a big time S. She's a perfectionist. And so everything runs through her in her business. And that's been her mentality, for a long time. And I think probably what she was taught from her family. And so that's been a struggle for her to start thinking, like a B, and let go of some things and reach out to the team and let them help us with this, because we're newbies in network marketing. We'll tell you, we didn't know anything about it and still don't know much, and so it's really important for us to reach out and to be part of the team and not try to run this thing by ourselves.
Yes, that's correct. And Don, honey, you kind of shared this a little bit. Okay, now I feel better. I was like, wanted to be part of the part of the screen. So I will say that that for me, as Don has said, it's always being the one in charge. But what I've learned with network marketing is the key word is leverage, and to use others with their expertise. I don't have to know it all. I want to know it all. I absolutely fell in love with the fact that the product uses my ingredients, my language, my horticulture, my herbs and the plants, and that's the fundamental base. And being Asian on top of that really, it just fit like a glove for me. And then, but the fact that Don just in the last 1 week, as I'm just beating my head, there's no way I'm going to be able to grow this like I want to grow it. So in the speed of time, because I'm also running another business. And he says, you got to get the S, you got to get the S out of you. You got to start using the leverage and the team and the systems in place. You're already a part of it. You've got to shake it off. And so that's what I've been battling on my own as I'm trying to structure this new business along with Julie. And then I will say that one of the things that kind of fit well with Isagenix is I've always been, again, coming from the Japanese business side mentality. I was told, when you have a business, try to find a business that is cash, it's cash business. And number two, has few employees, because again, of everything that goes to having an employee. And number three, low overhead. And in this case, it's cash business, and the employees, there is no employees, everybody's business owners, we're a team. And then the products, boy, you click and boom, it's at your house in the next day or so. And then everything else, just falls into place. I couldn't be more excited. And of course, I know that we're kind of run out on time. And so I just want to thank everyone who has supported Don and I in the past 2 months. You've just lifted us up. I'm really looking forward to the I Can seminar with Kathy Coover and the team again. And so signed up for that. And that's just in a couple of weeks. That's at mid-April. And then already signed up. We're going to the IC University. And that's April 29th, May 1st. Cannot wait for everybody to get together, do I will say a cocktail, that's, everybody knows I do all my shakes usually in the evening time in a martini glass, because that makes me feel so good. And and then Don, for the most part, he's going to do I Can, but he knows that for the IC University, he just wants me to be with the girls, because we do our best thinking as we just learned at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, around the bed or around the bar. He doesn't hear that one, but anyway, so see you all there.
Well, you guys, that was really, really an exceptional presentation, Don, and a wonderful share. Thank you so much. I know we all got a lot out of it. So it's recorded. I'll post it up tonight after it's set up on YouTube, so we can listen to it over and over again. Thanks, you guys. Love you lots.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night,
Enjoy
everybody.
Good night. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you
it.
guys. Awesome. Thanks for joining, everybody. It's a great night.
Great
God bless.
presentation.
Great call.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Night.